Good morning, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your first video blog of the day for Wednesday, April 15th, 2015, around 6:58 in the morning, Billerica, Massachusetts. It's going to be a nice and sunny day, highs in the 70s. Some news to report. It's income tax day is due. All your taxes have to be due tonight. Also, the Boston Red Sox beat the Washington Nationals by a score of 8-7. The Boston Celtics beat the Toronto Raptors by a score of 95-93, getting the number 7 seed, and they're going to play Cleveland. The Miami Heat have been eliminated from the playoff contentions. The Stanley Cup playoffs start tonight. No Boston Bruins, though, but it should be an interesting Stanley Cup playoffs tonight. And also, we'll never forget 4/15/13, 2 years ago, was the infamous bombings at the Boston Marathon. And that's about it on news. And my first video subject of the day is something that happened 150 years ago today. That was one of the most saddest days and infamous days in American history. It was the day that Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, passed away at the age of 56 after being shot by John Wilkes Booth, an actor. Abraham Lincoln was the President of the United States during probably one of the most difficult times in our country's history, during the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln was probably one of the most famous and popular presidents of all time, probably right next to George Washington. And Abraham Lincoln was born in Kentucky. He grew up in Illinois. He loved to wrestle and stuff. He studied law, and he was like a state senator in Illinois. And he famously won in 1858 against Stephen Douglas. And the big topic was trying slavery. Abraham Lincoln wanted to abolish slavery, which, that was not right what people did with like having slaves back in when the country first started. That was very, very bad with people having slaves. And Abraham Lincoln lost that election for U.S. Senator in Illinois, but he got very popular. And he ran for president in 1860, and he ran and won. And then he didn't have a beard back then, but he grew a beard because people feared that he would be attacked or something, so he had to grow a beard for his disguise. And also, when he was elected president of the United States, many southern states seceded from the Union, and they formed the Confederate States of America. And then in April of 1861, the Confederacy bombed Fort Sumter in South Carolina, which was a U.S. port, and that ignited the American Civil War, which was probably one of the worst wars that we ever fought, because it was against each other. It was over slavery and stuff, which, that I told you slavery was wrong. And this war lasted for about 4 years and stuff. It was awful. Many lives were lost. It was sometimes family members versus family members. The North was the Union, and the South was the Confederacy. It was close to a 4-year war. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in the Confederacy states and stuff. And also, he delivered a great speech to the Union troops in Gettysburg in 1863, which was the Gettysburg Address. It got the troops powered like a pep talk and got motivated and stuff like that. And Abraham Lincoln got to them, and eventually the Union won the Civil War against the Confederacy, like on April 9th, 1865. That ended the Civil War between the United States, which was awful, but it was settled. Abraham Lincoln was re-elected president in 1864, and it was probably going to be another great 4 years of his presidency. We probably was going to reconstruct the Union and get the Confederacy states back to the United States of America, but that didn't happen. There was like a plot to kidnap Abraham Lincoln as far back as like November of 1864 during the presidential elections, but that plot was foiled. But there was one guy who was an actor named John Wilkes Booth, who was like, even though he was from the Union, he was a kind of a sympathizer for the Confederacy States of America, and his goal was to try to assassinate Abraham Lincoln. On April 14th, 1865, Abraham Lincoln and his wife Mary, the First Lady of the United States at the time, was set to see a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. And the play was pretty good, and Abraham Lincoln sat in the balcony, stuff in a private balcony, and somehow John Wilkes Booth snuck into the balcony, because I don't think there was Secret Servicemen back then. He snuck into the back, and then he shot Abraham Lincoln in the back, and then he jumped off the stage, and he says, I did it, and eventually he was caught, and he got away. And Abraham Lincoln was shot in the back, and then he passed away the next morning. And it was a very sad day in American history when Abraham Lincoln passed away at the age of 56. Abraham Lincoln was the first president to die in office, and he was the first president to be assassinated. Very, very sad day in American history. Probably one of the most saddest days of all time. And Lincoln had a funeral procession through a train and stuff. And he went back to his home state of Illinois, where he was buried. And a few days later, John Wilkes Booth was shot and killed. And it was like one of the most saddest times in America. Abraham Lincoln will go down in history, probably next to George Washington, most popular president, most likable and stuff like that. I don't know what would have happened if he stayed alive and finished out his second term. He probably would have got the Confederacy states back into the Union, and everything would have been healed with the things that happened in the Civil War and stuff like that. Afterwards, like Andrew Johnson became the 17th president of the United States, but in 1868 he was the first president to be impeached. But eventually he avoided being removed from office and stuff like that. And Abraham Lincoln is Honest Abe, and every single year they name President's Day after him and George Washington. And that's about it on that. Be back later, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, with 2 more video blogs. First video blog will be about the famous Jerry the King Lawler versus Andy Kaufman feud. I'm the king. I'm the new king of Memphis, Tennessee. I'm going to knock that Lawler out last week. I'm going to knock him out again. And then the third and final video blog tonight will be the start of the 5 personality profiles of Stanley Cup captains. It's the first one's going to be longtime Nordiques and Avalanche captain Joe Sackett. Have a good day, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Bye now.